Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Jason.
With me today is life coach and LOA teacher Joel Elston.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. And Joel, we were talking before we got started about what had been happening with my cat Joy, how he passed 3.5 weeks ago and so forth. And what many listeners don't know is that the saga has continued because Joy's sister, Harmony, whom Louise takes care of, has the exact same kidney situation that Joy has. She's a little bit better off than he was. She has more to fight with, but I'm finding that less than a month later, I'm having to deal with all the old feelings all over again. It's like they just keep coming back. So I think that's why Jen picked the topic of healing today, because that's one of the big challenges that we face as we deal with loss, because loss does come into our lives. It is a part of what it is to be alive. And it reminds me that, I mean, this is two cats. Cats are certainly very important to me, and they're very important in our lives. But it also reminds me that there are people who lose multiple people within a short period of time. And it gives me empathy for what they're going through just to go through this with the cats, because it's rough. It's really, really rough. My sister actually had to go through it recently. Somebody that she used to be involved with, who fathered her daughter, passed within, I think it was like 2 weeks of when her best friend also passed. She lost two people within a very short period of time. There's another example of it. When people go through that, it's just brutal. I mean, it's almost like life is piling on top of you. There's also, I guess, a certain LOA piece of it as well. But the bottom line is, it's the challenge of finding a way to make peace with what happened and somehow, some way, appreciate what seems to be unappreciable.
I agree. It's the grieving process, the healing process from grieving is very complicated and unique to every individual. And it's something, there is no roadmap. There is no, where if you have a fever, there's a protocol to help reduce your fever. There's things you can do. But in grieving being an individual process, the healing is really based on where you're at, your perspective, it's just all up to you, and it's done individually. And that there is no general path that you have to follow, or a sort of an instruction book of how to do it. It just doesn't exist.
No, it doesn't. And I think you're right. It is very unique, very individual. I was telling you before we got started, my own way of dealing with it is not something I ever planned. It's not like I've been working out in my mind, well, this is how I'm going to deal with it. It's just, this is what I'm finding I'm doing. I find that I, on the one hand, am doing the little mind tricks that I know to do in order to try to adopt a way of perceiving and appreciating the situation that kind of goes contrary to what I'm feeling. And at the same time that I'm focusing on these things, I find my feelings go entirely in the opposite direction, in the direction of, this is this horrible loss. I'm so deprived, I'm so bereft, and so forth. The contrast is really astonishing.
Sure.
It really is. It's just amazing how I can have two vastly disparate ways of experiencing the same thing at the same time. And yet that's literally what comes up. And the other thing that really grabs my attention, I'm really amazed. I probably shouldn't be, but I'm really amazed at how I can know that, like with the case of my cat and with the other cat that Louise is taking care of, I've done everything I can to care for them. I've done everything that I can to help them to heal, to get them the right treatment and so forth. And yet I can still deep down feel like I didn't do enough at the exact same time. I can feel both. I can think it and I can feel it, and they're in direct conflict with each other. And it's bizarre. It's an amazing thing that I don't know what it is about human psychology and physiology, but somehow we're able to pull that off.
Well, I mean, it's part of the stages of grief, where you're simultaneously, sort of negotiating, bargaining, and then you're in denial, then you're in acceptance, then you're, the one of the hard parts of life in general for any living and breathing creature is death is inevitable. It's not negative. It just is inevitable.
It's just reality.
Yeah, it's reality. It's part of the process. I I don't know when it's going to be for me, but at some point, I know eventually that's going to happen. I don't expect it to be anytime soon. But I
Right.
know there's just no way around that. So what animals don't have is the lifelong knowledge that they are eventually going to die. I'm not saying toward the end they don't realize it, but it isn't like built-in information for them that at
Mm,
some point their life's going to come to an end. Uh, Humans are aware of that at a really young age, and
mm.
and so I don't know which one's better. I mean, probably not knowing on some level helps, but also just becoming, a lot of it is accepting, and then after, and healing isn't for our loved ones who pass on. Healing
No,
is for the people that are left back.
that's right.
Uh, and so I believe energy can't, you energy has to go somewhere. You can't kill energy. First law of thermodynamics. Energy, you're not gonna. It has to be somewhere. So
Mhm.
our internal energy, whatever you call that, it doesn't get lost. It just transforms to non-physical, and knowing that on some level helps. And I believe that includes cats or all living beings as well.
Oh yeah,
Anyway,
totally.
but understanding for us of we're limited in the physicality of life, so you're really battling your mortality when you're having a trouble accepting this as well. But
Right.
instead of understanding that, yeah, there is no end to the energy. The physical end will happen at some point. That's it.
So what we're really talking to here is, as Jen entitled the episode, we're talking about healing in the face of something that when you're in the middle of it, feels like there's no way you can heal from it.
Right.
Astonishingly, we do anyway. It's kind of a remarkable thing, and
That's really philosophical, because I don't know if we ever do heal from it. I really don't.
okay,
I think the loss of my son TJ. I don't think I've healed from that.
okay,
I don't think I will ever. I have learned to incorporate that. I know but it isn't like there's a side of me that can't instantly be traumatized by something, a ringtone in a phone, or a
mm,
picture popping up. So, and I know how to manage it and process it, but I don't think I could ever call it healed. I don't think, in a weird way, I don't think I want to be healed from it, if that makes any sense.
actually, I think it does make some sense. I would also say that what I was calling healing perhaps might be better described as the pain subsiding over time and being less often triggered over time.
Yes.
Because you're right, you can be triggered, long after the event. But I mean, the day that I had to give the order to put him down, I probably collapsed into tears a dozen times. The day afterward, probably close to 2 dozen times. The third day, it was probably about a dozen and a half. The fourth day, it was down under a dozen. The fifth day, it was down to 5 or 6 times. So over time, the incidence decreased. I can't say the pain decreased during that short period of time, but the incidence level, the number of times that it happened decreased. And I can honestly say that over the last 3 weeks, it has now gotten to the point where the pain is less than it was, when the first thing happened.
Sure.
Now, will the pain go away entirely? According to what you're suggesting, maybe not. But I do know there's at least a decrease that goes on.
Well, there's also, in my mind, sort of the interpretation or perspective of the presence of my son. I feel all the time,
Mm,
and I feel his loss all the time. Now, it doesn't occupy every second of my day. It doesn't,
mm,
it doesn't, don't break down every day or any of that kind of stuff. But I am aware there isn't a day that goes by I don't think about him multiple times a day. And it just, but it's not, is there's an acceptance to his passing that exist. I understand the condition of it all, but it's just,
mm.
he is a part of me, and it's something that his physical absence is something that I've just learned to, live around. It's been, he passed away it's been 12 years since he passed away,
Mm.
and it's certainly not that first month of pain, which was brutal and ungodly.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
but the idea that it still influences stuff in my life today, and it it's like anything else. It's I told somebody I'm in remission from the grief, but I'm not cured of the grief.
It's an interesting way to put it. Yeah, I
Yeah,
get it. When you express it that way, it's pretty clear what you're saying, and it
yeah,
totally makes
yeah.
sense.
And
I actually had an incident happen too, because I've been trying to give support to Louise and to help Harmony and so forth as they're going through stuff. And by the way, Harmony's actually she's responding, which is a really interesting thing. We can get into that in a moment. But after I went over to visit, and I have some Reiki training, so I was doing some Reiki on Harmony, and we actually got her to the point now where she is eating each day. She had stopped eating. Well, she's eating again. It's kind of a miraculous situation, so we're pretty happy about that. I mean, she's nowhere near out of the woods, but it's a nice improvement. But then I came home after visiting that day, and I had an incident where now the way my apartment is structured, my bedroom is kind of like in the back left corner, and I came to the living area toward the bedroom, basically just to unload stuff like you do when you come home, right? I passed by where I had my computer station. That's where I do these shows from, and put stuff into the bedroom, came out, turned toward the computer station, and then jumped because there was a cat running across my feet until I realized there was no cat there. And I said, wait a minute, what is this, a visitation? Holy cow. And I could have sworn there was a black cat running past my feet.
Yeah, well,
so
yeah,
I'm convinced that was Joy coming to say, hey, it's okay. I'm still here. No problem.
That's great. That's great. Yeah.
But on the healing side of it, I mean, we've been talking primarily about the healing of a loss, from a death. But there's also healing associated with the struggle to survive. As you observed, Joy had a very strong will to survive. His sister also has a very strong will to survive. She's demonstrating it in terms of making progress in the face of circumstances where she really shouldn't. I mean, all of the protocol and all of the prognosis says, no, once she starts declining, she's going to keep declining. You might be able to slow it, but you won't be able to improve. Well, she improved over the last few days, which kind of took us by surprise. I realized that there was a major factor involved that I attribute to why she improved. Now, part of it is we did get some medication from the vet. It's medication that you put into her ear, and it gets into her bloodstream and encourages the hunger mechanism to kick in so that she can eat. But there have been days where Louise didn't apply that, and she ate anyway. And all of the improvement seems to have started from the point where between the two of us, we were giving Harmony a lot of attention, a lot of love, a lot of, you're the focus of everything, the Reiki, all that kind of stuff. From that point on, she was improving. So it makes me wonder, isn't this an example of how through the power of our thoughts, through the power of our emotion, our love, that we can actually help somebody else?
Sure. There's a whole lot of Dawson Church. It wrote several books on this concept about energy healing and how people have been healed from people miles away, continents away.
Yeah.
I'm forgetting the name of his book, but it was a very very interesting book about mainly focused on how energy healing, everything from the various forms of healing to noticing when a group of people focus on healing from a distance, that people get better without it, even when the people that are in the hospital don't know they're being focused on. So I'm fascinated by that concept, and I believe in all that stuff. Don't know exactly the tangibles how it works, but I just and so much of everything is medical science can go so far, but there's also Joe Dispenza talks a lot about this in his books, about how there's energy healing, and even though kidneys in theory can't rebuild, heart muscles certainly can't rebuild, at least is what they say, but yet there's always somebody that seems to be coming back from these things. So it's
which is interesting. Yeah.
Yes.
It's surprising, but it's starting to happen often enough, and I guess that's one of the benefits of living in the age of the internet. We're being exposed to more of those kinds of exceptional situations. But I'm also experiencing it personally. I mean, I told you I have Reiki training. I'm through Reiki 2. I'm going to pursue the Reiki Master next month. But with Reiki 2, you learn long distance healing. It's one of the techniques that they teach you in that class. And I've been using it lately. I've been using it on other co-hosts, on both Anne Marie and on Jody Lynn. And I used it with Harmony, both in person and from my home to Louise's home. The astonishing thing to me is, as I've been practicing it, how real it feels. I mean, one of my favorite things to do is to either ideally see somebody like, you and I are doing a show right now, and we can see each other through the video. So like when I was working with Jody Lynn or with Anne Marie, I could actually see them as I'm working. And with Harmony, we were doing the same thing. We were FaceTiming so that I could actually, Louise would hold the camera on her so I could see the cat. When doing the healing that way, and I go through the Reiki practice, I can literally feel the energy of the body. And then I can start doing things on the body, and I can see like with the cat, like a human, you could kind of say, well, it's placebo effect. Cause like with Jody Lynn, she had a knee issue. So I was trying to heal her knee, and within an instant she was saying, wow, I feel your hands. And then her knee healed. Well, the cat has trouble with the placebo effect because they don't really understand our English too well. But the cat, as I was applying the energy, I was watching the cat respond to what I was doing. I would make a shift, and I'd see on the video that the cat was making a shift. And I'm thinking, this is really crazy. I mean, I can feel this energy thing going on. I do this thing. It should affect the cat that way. And sure enough, it affects the cat that way. I mean, that impressed me. That really impressed me. Same thing happened with Anne Marie. Anne Marie was having a migraine one day. So I was trying to help her with the migraine. Within minutes, her migraine was gone. I'm thinking, this stuff's wild. Yeah. This stuff's really something.
Well, the concept, I told a story a few times on the show over the years about the dude who this gentleman, he was superintendent in a building in New York, and very high-end building. He worked 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Wealthy, demanding clientele, and he was the superintendent. So you'd have to understand how stressful that would be.
Oh God, yeah.
With every problem, every situation, he was constantly handling. He was a negotiator. He was a judge. He was a repair guy. It's whatever took place. So he one day at work he passed out, and they rushed him to the hospital, and they found he had stage 4 liver cancer. Wow. And it was they went later to an appointment to the oncologist. Oncologist said, look, there's not really anything we can do. If we try something, it might help you a few months, but it could make your quality of life worse. And so he decided that he was going to, he was originally from Greece, and him and his wife made the decision to return to Greece. So the good news, he had some money saved up. He has a couple rental properties in New York City, which provided good income. So he quit his job and he went to Greece. And this was right before spring when he went. And so he went back with one mission, and that was to plant a garden in Greece and hopefully live for the harvest. He was given 6 months to live, and that would be enough time to do that. So he moved to Greece, lived the Greece lifestyle by the beach, good quality wine, good quality real food, laughing with friends, dancing, just a lot of humor. And so he made it to the harvest. And oddly enough, he planted another garden. He made it to that harvest, and he planted another garden. And 10 years after his 6-month diagnosis, he realized he wasn't going to die from that liver cancer. And so he never went to the doctor once, just kept living that quality life and just waiting to die. And he realized, so he eventually had to return to New York to get rid of his rental properties. And when he did, he contacted the hospital where the doctor worked, which I don't know why I laugh at this, because it's not funny, but the doctor that diagnosed him was dead.
Oh dear.
But that's not funny, but it's still sort of like ironic.
It's ironic. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but this, younger doctor was there and heard what he was asking. And he said, well, would you mind if I pull your old x-rays or MRIs and let's compare them? And we'll do this for free, but I'm just fascinated how you're still alive. Okay. And they agreed to it. And so they scanned him and they rescanned him, and they looked at the first x-rays were serious, like stage 4, like in stage 4.
You're right.
And there's no sign of any cancer in his liver at all at that point.
Wow.
And the doctor said, he said, this is not even technically plausible. And what the gentleman's idea was, and the doctor act probably concluded, I think is how the story goes, that he took all that stress away. The body
Yeah.
was able to heal,
Yeah.
defeated his cancer, and last I heard, he was like 80 something years old, and
Wow.
and doing great. So healing a lot has to do with the environment. It has to do with your belief system, and when you're constantly under stress or you're constantly under so many things, it affects your system. So healing on a more global scale than what we're talking about is, I think there's a lot that we don't understand about the healing process, because the body is often capable of healing itself when you give it the proper conditions to heal and you put the right stuff in it. And a lot of people don't realize that. Sometimes the medicine they give, and this is not a conspiracy theory, I do believe that, I'm not totally against Western medicine, but sometimes the medicine is so toxic that you might cure the problem and create more difficulty. So,
Yeah. That's a fair criticism.
yeah, and by no means I'm recommending people not listen to their doctor, but just in general, I think when you understand that the healing process, the body is capable of healing far greater than we've been told, and I think
Yes.
that can apply to any area, not just the emotional grief, but I think the understanding. That's why perspective. That's why the ability to look at things is so important, because the perspective of your life sort of dictates that, and healing is not excluded from that, in my opinion.
I would agree with you, and I would even add in I don't know what to call it. A positive factor is the closest I can come to a term. But that positive factor is, if at all possible, you try to have someone in your life who is supportive of that,
Yeah,
who is supportive of, at the very least, supportive of you, and ideally supportive of the belief that you can overcome stuff. Because I suspect, now I don't know, because obviously the story that you told didn't really cover this piece of it, but I suspect that the man's wife played a major role in his recovery,
sure,
just because she probably played a role in the decision of, let's go to Greece. I mean, I'm sure he wanted to do that. I'm sure that was, he may have been the one who came up with it, but she was supportive of it. And
sure.
in that way, she was supporting what he was doing. That support is huge. That support can't be underestimated, in my opinion.
I
Or
agree.
at least it shouldn't be.
I
Because if
agree.
you underestimate it, you're basically not giving credit to something that's really very important.
Sure. I think the support, I think the mindset, I think the environments, I think it's, again, given the opportunity, the body has an amazing ability to heal way beyond the comprehension of modern medicine.
Mm. Way beyond. That's a good way to describe it. It is way beyond. I think it's also important to remember modern medicine is based on the idea of the double-blind placebo-controlled study. And the one thing that almost never gets mentioned about double-blind placebo-controlled studies is that we can't do enough of them. I mean, even if you're somebody who comes down on the pharmas and the drug companies and how terrible they are and so forth, even if you do all that, imagine that you could shift all of their spending over to double-blind placebo-controlled studies on the stuff you want them to study. They still couldn't study enough,
No,
because there's just simply not enough personnel and money and so forth to study all the things that we'd ever want to study where health is concerned.
agree.
So that means, in my mind anyway, it means that while modern medicine can go a certain degree, it can go a certain way, there's no way it could ever cover everything where health is concerned. Which means if we want to understand more about health, we can't just rely on modern medicine. We have to go beyond it.
Completely agree.
Otherwise, we're just limiting ourselves unnecessarily.
Completely agree. And I think it's
Yeah.
important. I think it's important to, when we look at that perspective of understanding, putting yourself in the environment of healing, putting yourself in the, surrounding yourself with the people like this, like you mentioned, this gentleman's wife, having the right people, going back to his home country, friends, family, going back to the generations that lived on his farm or whatever that was
Right.
where he lived. And
Right.
so there's a lot of that energy. You're bringing, generational healing back. You're generational dysfunction. There's generational healing, and those are things. There's really no way to test for them, and when they are, when something is sort of proven to some degree, it's automatically dismissed as, yeah, they say, well, that's an outlier that doesn't count. We can't include that. And the importance of, at least in my mind, of I get it. I understand how doctors feel, but also I think that the really good doctors understand the value of supporting the positive parts of healing, supporting that. There's a lot of doctors that do believe in that, let's not immediately just, well, you have X number of, months to live, this is not a good wouldn't mind something like this is not a good diagnosis. But there have been cases of people who, that's all you need is one, that I like doctors say, the people that have healed from this, and, there's no magical way of saying that, but here's, low stress, reduce your sugar, humor, putting yourselves in great environments where you're happy. Those are healing mechanisms that optimize the body's immune systems. So if there is a shot, let's try to use those as well, along with any other therapies that we might think medicine provides that would be helpful. Just at least bringing those to the table.
Yeah, because if you bring them to the table, you're opening yourself up to possibilities beyond what modern medicine can do.
Yes.
That's the whole secret right there. Yeah. Deciding that I'm not going to limit myself to modern medicine. I'm going to go beyond what modern medicine can do. I'm not going to turn off that modern medicine. I'm just saying it can only go so far. Let's see what we can do beyond what modern medicine can do.
Exactly.
Because it's not like there's no history of it. There's massive history of, especially in the East, of all kinds of stuff happening that modern medicine can't even begin to explain.
But yet, on the same token, if your appendix is about to burst, you don't sit there and do magical thinking. You have the damn thing cut out and you take some antibiotics. It's just, you got to do that.
It's probably a good idea. Right.
Yeah. So I have always been, I've never always been, both sides have value. Anyone in Western medicine that tends to discount Eastern medicine is, to me, missing a large portion. And equally, the people who believe that there is no value in Western medicine and dismiss it, they're missing an incredible tool as well.
I don't know what made me think of this, but I'll bring it up in part because I know it ties into something that you're passionate about. I had a conversation with a woman I just recently met, had this over the weekend, actually. And in this conversation, she's a psychiatrist, has been a psychiatrist for, I think, like around 40 years, something like that. And she, as I often do when I have guests here on the program, because we have psychiatrists, psychologists, therapists, we have all kinds of people come out of the program. So I will often try to find out, do they explore alternatives or do they limit themselves to mainstream medicine? And if they do alternatives, I praise them for it because that's a good thing. We're going beyond just that one knowledge set. So I asked her about that, and she gave me a very interesting answer. She did say, yes, she does. She encourages meditation. She tries to do therapy and so forth. But she was pointing out to me something that I had never really considered before. She said she believes that, now, of course, she's in the psychiatric field, but she was also trying to answer for all medical doctors, that the vast majority of medical doctors actually are sympathetic to the idea of looking beyond Western medicine. But a couple of interesting facts kind of get in the way. One is that, say, 60, 70 years ago, say back in the 1950s, approximately, I think she looked it up and found 75% of all physicians at that time were members of the American Medical Association here in the United States. Today, what do you think the percentage is of doctors who are members of the American Medical Association this year?
I have no idea.
Would you be surprised if I said it was 15%?
Really? Wow.
I mean, wow. When I heard that one, I was surprised. Like, that low? That's astonishing.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
I would never have predicted that. And she gave her opinion as to why she thinks that happens. It's because of the corporatism that has happened with medicine. I mean, starting roughly around the 1980s, you start getting the HMOs. Everything started working toward corporate structures and corporate profit structures and so forth. And doctors went from people who ran their own clinics to people who worked for other clinics. They became employees rather than business owners. And in the process of doing that, they didn't realize that at the time that they were making these decisions to join these structures. They thought it was making their lives easier because they didn't have to, be business people and so forth. But what they were actually doing was giving power away. And the expression of giving the power away was that they stopped becoming members of the American Medical Association because the corporation would look out for them. So she expressed the opinion that many, many doctors would like to be able to kind of push against it, but their employers won't let them. I thought I hadn't heard that one before, but that's a really interesting viewpoint.
Well, one of the things, I do this thing called Function Health. That's Mark Hyman's, where uh, he run. There's this program that's so reasonably priced. He runs. You go to Quest Labs and they draw 150 labs, and the most comprehensive lab work I've ever seen.
Mm.
And and you get it tested twice a year. It's a great value. I recommend it to everybody. It's a great way to monitor your own health. And then every 6 months, you get to monitor the differences. And then that's a great tool to be able to take to your doctor. The shocking thing is the number of doctors that hate those comprehensive results.
Really?
Yeah, because they're like, well, because it opens up a Pandora's box of things. Because the stuff that nobody ever tests for, it's like, well, now we got to look at the bigger picture, how this goes together. So a lot of doctors don't like their patients to be empowered, because it sort of, in a weird way, gives a narrative to I can sit down with my blood labs with a doctor and say, okay, look at this, let's compare this, and it's like, wow, that's a lot to it. So you have the medical world, and the corporate structure does dictate, the number of patients you can see in an hour. Hopefully you're going to see at least 4 patients in an hour. You got this going on. They have these things, these goals they want you to reach. And
right.
Money obviously drives these things. So,
right.
Talking about this kind of stuff is, it first of all slows down the process. The idea of looking at all these additional things out there, the idea of, let's retest, let's not overreact, let's not immediately medicate, let's see, one of the things in psychology that I find incredibly hilarious is when you're in whatever form, social worker training or just counseling school, one of the rules is you never diagnose on the first visit. You don't.
Right. Yeah.
It's what they teach everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Insurance companies demand a diagnosis on the first visit. It's just the most, it's literally, for us to cover this session, we need a diagnosis.
Yeah.
I find
how interesting that they basically fly in the face of what good medicine theoretically is supposed to do.
You see that a lot. And so, I'm really encourage people to take control of their health and healing. I know we're sort of getting a little away from the original concept, but healing in the general context of, healing is going to, I love when people empower themselves and they understand, my entire life, when I was 10 years old, my blood pressure was 130/80. Always been 130/80. Until I was in my 40s, 130/80 was always good blood pressure. Then,
right.
Yeah. Then the recommendations got lowered to 120/70.
Yeah.
And every doctor after that would take that would want me to take blood pressure medication.
Ugh.
And it remains 130/80. I've just said, you guys are crazy. This has been my standard forever. I'm in incredible shape. I go through all the things of what I have going on, and they're like, yeah, well, here's the standard. So the standard, they used to do that with cholesterol. Cholesterol had a much higher threshold, and they keep lowering the threshold. And then all of a sudden they want to medicate that. And the medication for cholesterol, like statin medications in general, are not always good for you. They can do other damage. So I just look at the process of how the separation of medicine today and healing have sort of taken 2 different paths. It can't be, medicine today can be used as part of your healing protocol, but I think you got to do deeper dive than just sitting there listening to the doctors or the whatever the corporate structures of healthcare are telling you.
Yeah, whenever I hear a story like that one, the phrase that comes to my mind as I hear that story is moving the goalposts.
Yes.
Whenever I hear a story about moving the goalposts, as soon as I hear the story, that phrase rings in my mind. And I say to myself, okay, who's got some kind of a gig going on here? Because
Yes.
that's what it always is. Somebody's got honestly, it's a form of con. Somebody's got a
Yes.
con going on where they're trying to turn it into more money, or they're trying to get a windfall they wouldn't normally get, or whatever. And it's astonishing how often that happens. But like you say, it's also an opportunity to recognize, okay, well, if somebody is moving the goalposts, first of all, it means I don't have to pay all that much attention to the fact that they're moving the goalposts. And secondly, it's an invitation to take control of my own health, to take control of my own situation. Because if I can't really trust the people who are moving the goalposts, that means I have to trust myself, and I have to trust the people who I really do trust who don't move the goalposts.
And
So
that's
it's kind of an indicator, really.
well, and that's a strong indicator of, in today's world, advocating for your health, understanding your bio individuality.
Right.
I also have this is a hilarious story how I got this, I came to this, but years ago when I got early in recovery, from my addiction, I hadn't been to the doctor in forever, and so I went and got a comprehensive physical, and everything was. I felt great. I knew I'd feel great, and then he was a very young doctor. He got my urinalysis back, and he goes, "We have a serious problem." I go, "Really?" And he goes, "You have blood in your urine."
You've told me this one, yes.
Yeah, and I'm like, "Oh my God!" And I never heard that from
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Oh, that's terrible." And he said, I need you to get to let's get you in the hospital. And there's a procedure called an IVP where they put dye in your body and they look at it
Right.
and the kidneys and everything. So we got to find out what's going on. It could be cancer. It could, that was the first thing he said, it could be cancer. So this is before I was into all the stuff I'm into. And I didn't know any of the knowledge I have today.
So a young
So
man, right?
that night I go home and I'm worried to death about it.
Sure.
They got me in the next day for this procedure, so I'm thinking this is real serious. And my kidneys started hurting, at least what I thought were my kidneys started hurting.
Oh, yeah.
Because now I'm thinking about, oh my gosh, I'm this is terrible. So next morning I didn't sleep all night. I get in and they do the procedure, and afterwards he comes out, and this older doctor is the one that did the procedure. So the young doctor comes out, but the older doctor comes out. He goes, "Son, you have what they call a microscopic hematura. It happens in about one in, maybe 100,000 people. It's not dangerous. There's no real explanation, but it's compounded often by people who lift weights heavily."
Wow.
He said, every time you're going to give urine to test, they're going to find microscopic blood. He said, it's not a big deal, but now you know. And he looked at the doctor. So every doctor doesn't want to run this test every time they see it. And so I later went home and called my mom because I didn't want to worry her. And I told her about the whole thing. She said, "Well, son, I wish you'd have called me. We went through this when you were 4 years old. Same exact story. You've had this since you've had it your entire life." And
Yeah.
and so every time I go to the doctor, when I do that, I tell them I have this. Here's the things that are individual to me. Like, and a lot of them they're like, "Well, I don't understand that." I go, "Well, I don't need you to understand it. I'm not going to do any follow up on this. You're going to find a microscopic couple of cells of blood in my urine. You're going to be fine. There's nothing to worry about. My kidney function will test perfectly," and it does. So it's just but being able to advocate for yourself and a lot of times they just send you down a path, and it's just like, oh my God, what are we doing here?
Yeah. But I have something mildly similar to that. People in my family have a tendency at times to show an orangey color, like we have some kind of a liver problem going on.
Right.
In fact, there is none whatsoever. It's just something that happens with our particular physiology. And my ex-wife Louise used to see it, and once she learned that was what was going on, it didn't worry her anymore. But she'd see it, say, "Oh, you're doing it again. You're getting orange again."
Yeah.
So I mean, it was completely non-threatening in any way, but it's if the average person had that symptom, it would be cause for concern. They'd be
Sure.
like, there's something going on here that's got to be addressed. with me, it's like, no, it's not anything at all.
Well, and that's why, the idea of just being able to advocate, because medicine is uh, run today by insurance companies, and they're and they'll want to test. Pharmaceutical companies want you on every drug possible. I
Mhm.
mean, they make money that way. The system is intended to sort of look at it that way, and I'm not
Oh
trying
yeah.
to bash the system. I'm just simply saying advocating for yourself, and keep looking for a doctor who listens to that will believe in the concept of your perspective matters, your mindset matters, and they're hard to find sometimes, but you find one. Finally found a good young doctor now here locally that I really like, and he gets me, and he understands, and we have great conversations. He asked me a lot of questions about the mind and all that stuff, mindset, and so healing is going to have a lot of energy based on where you're at emotionally, and how things are working as well.
I've also learned the importance of physicians like your young doctor doing what they're doing and doing it quietly.
Yeah.
For instance, I had a guest on here on the program roughly, I'm going to say a month ago, a psychiatrist named Dr. Fred Moss. Very interesting guy, very interesting show. Um, he was the kind of guy who calls a spade and doesn't hesitate to do so. For instance, at one point he was talking about narcissism. He says, "Let's be honest, narcissism that's just an asshole. That's what that is."
Yeah.
Now, not the sort of thing you normally hear from a psychiatrist, right?
No, but accurate.
Well, interesting thing happened, not just interesting, kind of a sad thing happened within like 2 weeks after he appeared on the program. And I don't think it had to do anything to do with the program. It had to do with what he does in his practice. His employer of 47 years fired him. He got fired because lately he had really been speaking out and saying, "Look, there's a lot of bullshit going on here. We need to call this bullshit for what it is. We need to stop just medicating the crap out of people and all this other stuff." And his employer said, "Nope, we're not going to continue to keep you on staff because what you're uttering is dangerous."
Yep.
So to me, the big indicator is it was fine for him to have the attitude, but he should have been a little bit more quiet about it in order to keep his job and not plastering it all over the place. Simply working with his customers and his patients and helping them directly rather than splattering it all over the place. And that kind of hits for me because I've had so many people come onto the program who have gone out of the way to say, "Look, I have this medical background, and I'm going to say this thing that the medical people don't really like so much." I give them credit for it whenever they do it, but quite honestly, they're putting their careers at risk when they do it. So now I feel kind of torn about it. Like on the one hand, I admire them, and on the other hand, I want to say, "Shut up."
Well, and that's that's the and also you even get further in that, and when you look at if you're an employer, and you have the rules of medicine, so to speak, whether you like them or not. The employer usually, depending on the way it's set up, but most practices provide doctors that work for them, they provide the malpractice insurance. So
Right.
these things, saying those things out loud where you can prove you said it could, and something goes wrong that they listen to your advice, then malpractices, you're going to get sued.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a very complicated. I agree with you. I wish it needs to be more low key, and I think it needs to, like you said, doesn't need to be out there just everywhere. Because, but just the concept of it needs to, most doctors will at least get to the place that they do believe that people with positive attitudes heal faster than those without.
And
Most will say
that basically fuels me. And the reason it fuels me is for quite some time, I've been feeling pretty discouraged about the medical community at large because I wasn't seeing a whole lot. I was seeing people come on to the show here who were the exceptions, but the vast majority were adhering to the party line. I'm now realizing that there are a lot fewer of them adhering to the party line than I thought.
yes.
And that actually feels better. I mean,
Well,
I kind of wish they could say more, but I'm like encouraged, like, okay, these people, they're not only are they smart, but they're recognizing the limitations of their own field. I give them credit for that.
I agree. And also there's MDs and there's DOs, doctors of osteopath.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So DOs tend to be trained in some of this stuff too.
Right.
I tend to like DOs better. This young doctor that I see is a DO. So
He's a DO. Okay. Yeah.
So that gives, they're identical in their privileges and what they're able to do, but it's just,
They're equivalent to MD. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. They're equivalent with a little different training.
Right.
For the longest time in my practice, particularly around addiction, the standard operating procedure for anybody that reports to anybody about having an addiction issue, whether it's drugs, alcohol, or whatever, is 12-step meetings like Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics
Right.
Anonymous, Gamblers Anonymous. That's the what everybody says you're supposed to do, right?
Right.
So that's the gold standard.
The party line.
Party line. And so early in my practice, and for those that know me at all, know I'm not a fan of those programs generally.
I think that's a fair assumption to make. The various comments you made to me, particularly in private, are that you are not a fan. I think you've actually made comments publicly.
Oh yeah, I say it all the time now. So it is, the problem with those programs is the narrative and some of the way it's wording. It isn't the program's inherently wrong, but it's just it's very much it sort of goes against law of attraction in my mind. By declaring you're an alcoholic. I'm Joel. I'm an alcoholic. I'm powerless, and these are, and I'm like, I'm Joel. I'm in recovery, and I'm very powerful. So I do the opposite of that. And so for some people, 12-step programs work fine. I will never talk somebody out of a 12-step program that works for them. But younger people in particular just have a really hard time with those programs. So early in my career, I always had to dance around my belief in that. Because it was going to be, I'll never get any clients. I'll be considered, whatever in the greater Richmond area. So I had to really walk a fine line, of how I worded that. 12-step programs are the standard. Some people don't, may be looking for something else, blah, blah, blah. And, well, right now I'm at a point, you can imagine, I could care less about any of that stuff. So young people, somebody under 25, I think 12-step programs are actually bad for them. I think they do the opposite. I think one of the problems when you send somebody to a program that is so rigid and it tells them that, you're not trying hard enough, or you're not being honest enough, and eventually they're just going to say, well, I can't do this. It doesn't work for me. I'm worse than the rest.
Right.
Versus a concept of talking about where their power exists, talking about the subconscious brain, talking about the things that I'm into. So I'm not a big fan of the 12-step program, particularly for younger people. And as I said, those that it work for, you keep doing it. I'm not talking out of it, but as I've gotten some time, and I've also gotten to a point, nobody's cutting me off. It's just even the people that would be critics of that 15 years ago are like, well, Joel's really good at what he does. I'd listen to him, and I have a lot of doctors that after I talk to them, they sort of agree with me. So,
yeah,
but it's you have to be careful in the narrative. Early in my career, I couldn't be that blunt with it. So I do appreciate the doctors today that are trying.
There are a lot of very good people in not just medicine, in a lot of fields that have controversy like this attached to them. And it's astonishing how many find themselves in the place of having to advocate stuff that they really don't believe in anymore. Like the classic example that comes to my mind is people who go into the ministry. Particularly, you came from the Southern Baptist tradition. People went into the Southern Baptist tradition, and they entered as young preachers coming right out of seminary, and they were total advocates of it. And then over time, they found that their belief about it changed, but they couldn't change what they were saying because their congregations expected them to keep giving out the same BS they've been giving out all this time.
Absolutely.
So stuff, a lot of it, like with the medicine, the patients expect that to come out of their mouths. So they keep putting it out of their mouths because that's what the patients expect.
Well,
the thing I take hope from, though, is that there are so many people in these roles who, they find themselves in this terrible push-me-pull you where they're having to say things that they really don't totally believe in anymore. Despite that fact, stuff is getting out. That's one of the great benefits of the internet. despite the benefit, the efforts of the powers that be to keep things the way they'd always been, and make sure we always make sure that the medicine is always about the double-blind placebo-controlled study, and religion is always about going to hell, and there's all these different things are in place, and they're crumbling. They're all crumbling slowly, ever so slowly, probably far more slowly than some of us would like it to happen. But it's almost turned into an inevitability. And I think a large part of that is because there are so many good people in roles in these societies, in these fields and so forth, who are recognizing, yeah, that was perhaps useful 50 years ago, but it's not holding water anymore. And that inevitably is going to lead to positive change.
Always. And I've worked with several clergy members over the years that have come to the exact concept that you're talking about, that they got into this believing everything they were taught. They went to, and again, I'm also, full disclosure, I'm also in recovery, recovering Southern Baptist, just like that.
Okay.
So I've been in recovery that for a long time. So
very good. Okay.
But they'll come to me and they say, look, I bought into all this, but over the years and all the deep research I've done on religion and all the, this can't be true. And they go, why? But yet my retirement, everything's, I've been at this church for X number of years, and I gotta do this. And so the hard balance is, if I try to regulate away from what, the fire and brimstone that so many of them are demanding, then my job gets threatened. And it's just this, catch 22 for them. And it's a very, backward cycle. And I'm not bashing religion. I'm just saying people that, you do evolve in your belief systems, but people that when your job is going to work for a particular denomination, then you are stuck with what the dogma of that denomination is. You gotta go with it, even if you eventually find evidence that suggests that's not what you believe.
Which makes it really challenging. It really, really does. And yet, amazingly, the facade continues to crumble. I mean, yes. not just religion, not just medicine. A lot of fields where there are truisms that have been in existence for generations, the truisms are falling apart. Again, I point to the interconnectedness of the 21st century, the internet and so forth. We have access to information we never had before. And a lot of it, I mean, I think about what happened with this show. I started this show in 2012. You were actually my 12th guest. At the time that we started this show, if we said the words law of attraction, that was controversial. That was real. I mean, that you were pretty wacky. You were a wacko if you talked about that stuff.
Well,
today, that's the honest truth, sure. Yeah. But if we say law of attraction today, if somebody out there hears it, they say, "Oh yeah, I've heard that. Yeah. No big deal." That's it for like a 13-year period.
Yes, that's nothing. Well, and also the advent of when people start to see, like I'm probably on the I go way out there with this one, but I'm anti-raping children. I don't believe
that's a good idea. I like that idea. Yeah.
And as you see the number of clergy members over the years and the Catholic Church who's been compliant and complicit in raping children all those years, that's been exposed, so that people are saying, well, that can't coexist to what you're preaching.
Yeah.
So
that's a perfect example of what we were talking about, how the evidence gets out there despite the best efforts of those who want to keep it in.
Yes.
They can try to keep it in all they want to, but look at how much decline there has been in belief in these institutions.
Yeah. And also, but I also do feel on some level that there is still a great deal, if not an increasing amount, of spirituality.
Yes,
I see that a lot. I know a lot of people and a lot of my clients of all ages. I hear the same thing. I believe in God, but I don't believe in religion.
Oh boy, that's almost become a truism today.
Yeah, I hear that. If 9 out of 10 people that show up in my office say that. It's like,
wow.
Yeah,
wow.
And that's a lot different. It's like, no doubt I believe in there's a God. That I hear that from them. But the religions have ruined what is intended, but that doesn't diminish my belief in God. I hear that a lot.
Yeah. which is really encouraging. That's
Yeah.
just another example that, you know what, all of these things are, from my perspective, all of these are examples of healing going on.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
healing that happens sometimes at a glacial pace, but it still happens. And over time, you start to notice, like, wow, that mountain moved. Like, what happened here? That mountain actually moved.
Well, and you know, the idea of, you know, my personal belief system has, you know, as we talked about in the beginning, talking about the cats, and we talking about TJ or talking about me, my energy will continue. And you know, I have my theories of what happens. I don't have all the details. Nobody's given me that exact instruction book yet, but
Mhm.
I do believe that that happens. It's not a question in my mind. It's very. I'm also very good with. I don't know the exact details, nor am I supposed to at this point.
Mhm. Mhm. Which is actually probably a good thing.
Yeah, yeah.
When you
It's
really add it all up, it's probably a
yeah.
good thing, because that means you don't really have as much reason to focus on it.
Well, right, and you know, I will die one day, but it will be one day. I will. There will just be that day, and I'm not
Right.
gonna. I don't spend every day, you know, worrying about that. I just get up and go do what I do. I do. You know, I work out incredibly hard. You know, had a random guy come up the other day at the gym, and I was sort of shocked by this. He's a retired doctor, and he said, I was in the middle of lifting huge amounts of weight, and he comes over and he goes, I'm a doctor. And he said, at your age, that's probably not good for your heart. And I said, oh, okay. Well, and he goes, do you want to have a heart attack? And I go, well, I mean, it's not the worst thing that happened, could it? Just being facetious. And he's looking at me like, and so I did what I told everybody else that would say that. I said, but if I do have a heart attack and you're here, can you add 100 pounds to the bar and then tell everybody I was doing that much more?
Just take that chain and yank it a little bit more.
He just walked off like I was crazy. So, but I've used that line for years. Like, yeah, if I die in the gym, just add weight to the bar, then call the.
Just that weight to
Yeah.
the bar.
Yeah, I want the headline to read: Joel died doing 600-pound deadlift at 64 years of age.
Gives new meaning to the words deadlift, I tell you.
Yeah,
It's really
deadlift,
something.
exactly. So, you know, but it's just that it's just the but all of this and everything from the cats to the people healing, you know, life is you know, is something to be savored, and part of life is death. Part of life is not always being well, but taking control of your healing, whether it's emotional healing, whether it's physical healing, uh, actively processing, like you've done a great job with, you know, your healing. And I think I've done a great job with TJ's from TJ's death. As I
Mm.
said, it's not going to heal, but I'm in the healing process of this. It's a nuance. Um,
Mhm.
I don't expect it to ever go. I don't have time for it to go away. But again, it's not, as you said, it's not every waking moment. It's not every second. I'm not breaking down and crying every time. In fact, my way of dealing with TJ's death is you know, the moment of sadness that's inevitable occasionally. But I immediately attach one of the funny stories I have about him immediately. I I
Wow.
I
That's a
make
great
something that
skill.
makes me smile. So
Yeah.
I'm conditioned for a second to be sad and then start laughing at something he said. So
I kinda do the same thing with my cat, with Joy,
yeah,
because I loved watching Joy outdoors. Because I think I mentioned this before, but Joy was loved by everybody. He was loved by all the neighbors. He was loved by me, but he was
yeah,
loved by the neighbors. He was loved by the other animals, the domestic animals in the complex. He was loved by the wild animals. He would make friends with the wild, he would bring the wild animals home because they were hungry. He wanted to feed them, you know, so I was supposed to bring the cat food out for the wild animals. He made friends with everybody. And probably the one image I have him, there are a few images I have in my mind about him, but the one that I have more than anything else is him running free. He just ran with abandon. Not that he was going anywhere, not that he was chasing something. He just ran for the joy of running.
I love that.
And I think about that and I think to myself, wow, that was a cat who was really, really happy. He
Yes.
just lived a happy life every time he was outdoors. That's why he never wanted to come in during the summer. He wanted to run out there. He just
Yeah.
had so much fun doing it.
Yes. And that's how to look at it. So, you know, the process of all of this, whatever you're healing, whatever anybody out there needs to be healing, or whatever your definition of today's show is, but just remember that healing has an individual component to it. And as humans, sort of ending on this concept, we are far more capable of healing than anybody even realizes. I don't think we scratch the surface to that part of healing.
That's a great way to sum things up. So thank you for tying it together that way. Thank you, my friend. Thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We will see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.